الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم جميعا. Today, inshallah, we are going to start with an introduction to animation inside Maya. First of all, let's explain the parts related to animation that we need to be aware of inside Maya user interface. Here inside the drop-down menu, we can select animation. Here we have some tools we might use later. Of course, you can see when we chose the animation, some of the menus here will be changed. You can see these menus are related to animation. Here we have the timeline. Of course, we work in animation, we based on timeline, because if we want to define animation in a very simple and basic way, animation is a change of the object of an object, condition, or status over time. Change without time, we cannot call it animation. Animation in general, we can give an example to animation. If we create an animation for a text inside PowerPoint, Microsoft PowerPoint, we can call it animation. The transition between slides inside PowerPoint, we can call it animation. If we move an object from a position to another, we can call it animation. These are basic examples of animation. Complex examples of animation, like character animation or animal animation or vehicle animation, and more complex examples of animation, for example, fluid animations like water, like liquid in general, particles, collagens. These are more complex animation. How we can start creating an animation inside Maya? First of all, you need to be aware about the basics tools available inside Maya, as I said. Here we have the timeline. If you don't have it, you can click on the space and then click here on the right. You can select the time slider, the status line to add the timeline with the other controllers. Or you can go to Window, Workspace, and hit on Reset. As I said, here we have the timeline. The timeline here is 208 frames. If we want to increase it, here we can specify 400. But here still the frames available inside the timeline, or the frames that we can see inside the timelines, are still 208. How we can specify, if we want to show the whole 400 frames, we can change it from here to 400. Or we can click on this slider. If I click on this square and drag, you can see what will happen. If I click on the middle and drag, you can see the frames that will appear here inside the user interface. The frames will be start from 83. If I want to change it back to 0, I can click here to make or to specify the frames that will appear inside the timeline. Here we have 0. I can change the duration for the timeline from this one and this one. These two parameters that close to the slider, by using them, we specify the frames that will appear for us inside the timeline. But here we can specify the whole duration. For example, here if I put 100, you can see I can make this animation start from minus 100. Usually we leave it at 0, and here we increase as much as we need. Here we have the volume, because in the future we will create animations based on a specific voiceover, because this is what happened in real life. In real life, when we want to animate a character, usually we start with what? We start with recording the voiceover, and then we add the voiceover to Maya, and then we start the animation based on the voiceover, because we need to specify the timing between, for example, between the lip sync animation and the voiceover, between the action and reaction of the character and the voiceover. This will make our animation more accurate. But for now, we are going to start with the basic animation. Here we have auto keyframe. It's better to enable it. When we enable the auto keyframe, after we create the first frame inside the timeline, at any frame inside the timeline, if we change the status of the object, then a frame will be created automatically. So it's better to enable it. And here we have the animation preferences. Inside it, we can specify the speed of the preview. For example, if I click on a play now, you can see how Maya preview the keys. But if I change it here to playback speed, if I change it to play every frame and hit save, you can see the speed. Of course, usually we put it, usually we change the frame rate from here first to 25, because usually we work with 25. And here, instead of play every frame, we change it to 25 by 1. Okay, here 25, and here 25 by 1, and then we hit save. And this will be accurate. Remember that in videos, when we choose the frame rate 25, this means that 25 frames will be presented to the viewer during 1 second. Okay, so 1 second, inside 1 second, 25 frame will be presented. Okay, this is in basics. Before, of course, here we can navigate between the preview the frames. We can play forward or backward. We can go navigate between the frames by using this and this. We can click here to move 1 frame back or 1 frame forward. Here we can go to the beginning of the timeline or to the last frame inside the timeline. These are the main information you need to know before we start the animation. Okay. Usually when we create an animation, we use the channel box. Animation as a basic, usually we change the object condition over time, as I said. And changing the object condition means, for example, changing the scale, changing the rotation, or the position, or changing both of them or the 3 of them at one time. Okay, how we can do that? Here, I'm going back to poly modeling. I'm creating this cube. Here, you can see we have a translate in X, Y, and Z. We have rotate in X, Y, and Z. We have a scale in X, Y, and Z. During we selecting this cube. If I hit on S on keyboard, what will happen? You will see a red line behind the all parameters we have. This means that I created a keys for all of them at the same time. Now, if I move inside the timeline, for example, for a frame 50, if I change the translate X, a new key will be created on X only. Why? Because I changed the object status only in X axis in translate or in position. And why it creates a key automatically? Because, as I said, the auto keyframe are enabled. If I change the object position, for example, in Z axis, what will happen? A key will be created in Z axis. If I want to create an animation to rotation, see, if I want to change the scale, okay, if I want to create a key to all of them, I can hit on S again, okay? Or I can select the keys from here by click here and drag, and then right click, key selected. And now what will happen? See, if I hit on a play, if I hit on a playback, I can use these to navigate between the keys I have. And this is the basic way of creating an animation. Okay, after this key, if I move to frame 90, for example, if I want to put this object back and the scale to 1 again, and then I'm going to select all of them. I can select one of them, for example, and then the translate Y, and then right click and key selected. I can select both of them, and then key selected. See? Now what will happen? The object will move and then move back with rotation and change on scale. Okay? I have another object and I want to create an animation only in position. I don't want to change the others. I can use here the channel box to create a keys without clicking on S on keyboard. S short for set key, okay? I can select the translate in X, Y, and Z. I can hit on right and then key selected, okay? After that, I can move to frame 30, for example. I can change the position for this object, or I can change it from here. And as I said, if the auto key enabled, then the key frame will be created automatically. Okay, let me disable the auto key frame. If I moved here and if I change the object, for example, here, if I move, there will be no difference. Why? Because I didn't create, no new keyframe is created. If I want to change the object, for example, in frame 60, I want to put it here. After I change the object status, I need to select these, right click and key again. Because now the auto keyframe is not enabled. But as I said, usually we keep it enabled to create an animations automatically. And this is in brief how we can create an animation to an object by changing the translate or rotate or scale based, of course, based on the timeline. Okay, if we want to make an animation for a camera, of course, inside Maya, we have many types of cameras we can use. I'm going to add a texture to them. We have this scene, for example. Here you can see that the name of this scene or the name of this camera that we are using to navigate between the objects is perspective. You can see it here, but here the perspective is locked. We can unlock it here by using the channel box, but usually we do not use the perspective. Here inside the panels, see, here we have panels. We can navigate between all the scenes, between all the cameras we have as a default inside Maya. We can go to site, or we can go to top, for example, and we can go back to perspective. Before we start an animation, usually we create a camera for every scene, or we can create an animation for the same camera for all scenes that we are going to render. If you want to create an accurate animation for the camera inside Maya, try to imagine yourself that you are shooting and recording a real video. The camera preferences here inside Maya are a lot similar to the camera in real life. Okay, let me create a new camera. As I said here, inside panels, perspective, I have perspective. I need to click on new. And this is not the only way to create a camera. Here, inside the create, we can go to cameras, and you can see we have camera with aim, we have camera with aim and up. For now, you can use the traditional camera and it will be enough for you. Now I have pers 1. I can click double on it, and then I can name it, for example, cam. Let me name it cam 1. Focus, always focus on the names here. Now you are inside, you are looking through the cam 1. I want to go back to perspective and control the cam 1. But in order to control the cam 1 accurately, I need to keep seeing inside the cam 1 and perspective in parallel way. How I can make that? Here, while I'm still inside cam 1, I'm going back to panels, and here I will click on tear off copy to open a new window for the cam 1 or for the camera I'm inside it. Here, I can specify the area that will appear inside the render. Okay? Before I go outside it, I need to fix or prepare the render settings. For example, here I need to put the name. For example, scene 1. Usually with videos, it's better to not use JPEG. It's better to use EXR because the quality will be high and better than the JPEG or PNG. If I want to create an animation, here instead of single frame, I need to click on name.hash.ext. This means instead of hash will be the frames will be numbered. Because inside Maya, we do not render a video immediately. We render a sequence of frames, and then we use a software like Premiere, like After Effects, to convert these frames, these sequence of frames, to convert them to video. Here the numbering, how it will be, and here we can specify the rendering will start from which frame and ends when. For example, 200. And by each frame, we can render one frame. We can render 2 frames per 1 frame inside the timeline, or we can render 1 frame per 2 frames, for example, inside the timeline. Now, for now, forget about it. You can keep it as one. Renderable cameras, you need to select Cam 1 here. The preset HD 540. Usually we work with HD 1080. The resolution it's better to make it 300. And this is the main settings that you need to do to make a sequence rendering. Here we have the Arnold renderer. Sometimes when you are doing a test render, you can see a noise exist inside your scenes. This means the quality of the rendering will not be high. How you can fix it? By enabling the adaptive sampling. But keep in your mind, when you enable it, the render time will be much higher than rendering without enabling the adaptive sampling. But as I said, most of the conditions that you have noise in your scene, when you enable the adaptive sampling, you will get rid of these noises. The systems is better to choose GPU if you have GPU inside your devices. And that's it for the settings. After you finish, you can click on close. And now I have this window for Cam 1. I opened this window by using panels and then tear off copy. After that, here inside the original one, I'm going to panels and then perspective. I'm going back to what? To perspective. Now, I have here inside the timeline, I have Cam 1. You can see I have this shape for the cameras, and these shapes will not exist inside the rendering. For example, if you have many cameras, and if there a camera in front of your camera that you are going to use for render, this shape will not appear. This shape's only to help you to move the camera any way you want. Here, I'm selecting now what? This camera. See, if I move, what will happen inside this window? The camera will move, okay? Here, while I am selecting the cam1, I'm going to select the translate and rotate and put them back to 0. And now I can animate the camera as any other object. For example, here inside the timeline, I will click on S to add a key to all parameters. And then I will move to frame 30. I will move the camera here. I will hit on S again to add a key to all parameters. Now I need to check. Now the change will appear here. If I want to change, if I want the preview to appear inside the new window, I just can click one click inside it, and now click on any empty space. And then if you navigate inside the timeline, now what will happen? You can preview the content, the animation for the camera inside the new window or the window for cam1. See? I need to click here to preview the camera. I can continue the animation and then check. Okay. After I finish animating the camera, if I want to render a sequence of frames, of course, before I need to adjust the light. Let me try to use the area light. Intensity 1000. I'm going to try to use the IBR to check. Okay, this will be okay for me. I can change the render from here. And now I can move inside the timeline to check the rendering. See, if you want to check the rendering before you start the sequence rendering, after you prepare the light and check the time, the objects over the time, and then you can start the sequence rendering. How we can render a sequence? Remember that here, instead of animation, we need to select what? We need to select rendering. And here we have a render window menu. After we click on it, here we have render sequence. We can click on the options. Here also, we need to specify the camera. We need to specify the output location. Try always to select a folder, not a public space. For example, here I have scene 1. After you select, click on what? Remember that in the settings, we specified that the frames that will be rendered between what? 1 and 200, and you can see it here. The frame that will be rendered between 1 and 200 based on the render settings. Also, the quality will be 1920 by 1080. The resolution will be 300. All of these are specified by using the render settings. After we prepare the render settings and the render sequence, we can hit on render sequence. Before you start the render sequence, it's better to close anything beside Maya, because rendering usually is heavy on the computer devices. Okay, if I click open the folder I created on desktop, now we can see the keys, the frames are start to appearing because I have a simple scene. See? Now Maya will keep rendering the frames until finish the duration I specified, which from 1 to 200. If I opened any software, for example, After Effects or Premiere, I can click on import and select one of these frames and select image sequence to import them. And then we can export them as a video by using such softwares. And if you want to stop the rendering, what you can do, you can click on escape on keyboard to stop the rendering. If you want to stop the rendering, you can click on escape and then the rendering will stop. Okay. Here, if I hit on open a new composition inside After Effects, you can click on file and then import. You can import and then multiple files. Here inside the scene, you can select one of these frames, open EXR sequence, and then hit on import. If you drag it here, see, we have transparent area because this area is empty inside Maya. But you can see that now we have a video. Of course, if we want to render this video to create a video from these frames, here inside After Effects, we can go to File, Export, Add to Render Queue, Settings, Best Settings. We need to convert it to 25. H264 mean MP4. It will be good for us. The location, I can specify any location I want. And here, for example, test, I can specify the name I hit on save and then render. After I finish, you can see inside the file, I have a video. Of course, nothing will happen because will appear if we hit on play, because the video that we have contain only 4 or 5 frames. But you can see now we have video created from Maya.